doing a thing on Saturday. I will request off of work. I will make sure I am not working at all. I will be working for my show and for watching college football because it starts at 7:30 a.m. with Georgia Tech and I believe Boston College. We'll talk about it here in a second. At 7:30 a.m. as they play across the country, somewhere else. And then Oklahoma-Houston at 11, followed by a bunch of games throughout the entire afternoon and night. I am excited. Yeah. So let's go ahead and move on. Who are the dark horse college football playoff contenders for 2016 season? Now, of course, everybody's going to have their own top 10, top 5, way early predictions. And that's fine. Continue to have those. It's fun. It's fun to have those. And then also look at them throughout the couple months, throughout as the season progresses, saying, what was I thinking? Or I completely got that right. But I want to talk about some teams that kind of get a little bit of talk, but then don't. The dark horse college football playoff teams. Now, we'll start off with a team that you might not really label a dark horse, but they need a lot of things to happen for them to get into playoffs. And that starts off with the Houston Cougars. They finished 13-1 with the Peach Bowl victory over Florida State. And expectations for the Cougars are very, very high. They got Greg Ward coming back. A defense that looks to be pretty exciting. Coaches know what they're doing. The defensive backs coach, Jason Washington, he is one of the best out there. He knows how to get this team right. Got Todd Herman. You have Ed Oliver, the 5-star defensive tackle, going to the University of Houston. He'll start there at defensive tackle this year. And, of course, their success depends on Ward. Completed 67.2% of his passes, 2,800 yards, 17 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. He also ran for 1,100 yards and 21 touchdowns. Obviously, hashtag dual threat. But the thing is, while the Houston team's success depends on him, their lack of success can fall right on him as well. And mainly the coaching staff with the play calling. He took a lot of hits last year and missed 2 games because of it. Basically 2 games. He did not play against UConn, in which they lost on the road, which greatly, they would have been 13-0. And then you start thinking, oh man, do you put Michigan State or do you put Houston in this playoffs? What do you do? So the reason I put them at a dark horse position is because they play Oklahoma. They don't have the easiest schedule here. They have Oklahoma in a somewhat home game. It's a neutral game because it's in NRG Stadium, which aka used to be Reliant Stadium. It's where the Houston Texans play. So it's still in Houston. It's right across the street basically, but it's a neutral game. And you're going to have a lot of Houston. They open up the season that way. Now, of course, if they lose, they understand the season is not over with because it's a loss to Oklahoma. But it doesn't always work out like that, especially for a Group 5 team. They would honestly have to finish the season 12-1. But the AAC, not as strong as it was last year. You don't have Keenan Reynolds to worry about at Navy. You don't have Paxton Lynch and Justin Fuente to worry about Memphis. UConn, they come to your place if they do play them. I did not see that. And, it's UConn. So maybe there's some hope, but then things have to happen. Other teams are going to have one. There's going to be multiple teams that are going to have one loss. And if you get blown out by Oklahoma or lose by 14 points, your season's over with. There's no way you're making the playoffs unless every team above you loses 2 games. There's no way Houston makes the playoffs if they finish 12-1 in the season. They lose to Oklahoma, though, by 14-plus points because they're going to be like, you couldn't compete with a team that didn't make the playoffs, and honestly, Oklahoma's still going to be pretty good next year. It's just not going to happen. They're going to dismiss them already. If they dismissed them last year, they'll dismiss them this year. So dark horse team for Houston. Moving on, you have North Carolina Tar Heels. Now, I don't think they would be a dark horse team if Marquise Williams had one more year of eligibility at quarterback, but they don't. Mitch Trubisky is going to be the starting quarterback and replace Marquise Williams. But it's not like he's a guy who just never touched the field. He did. He touched the field good amount. He has game experience. You have 4 starters at the offensive line. You have Ryan Switzer, who is honestly one of the best talented receivers in college football right now. Mini Wes Welker, but just better. And then you also have a 1,400-yard rusher in Elijah Hood. That's not bad. That helps you a ton. And also, Malik Hollins, one of their wide receivers, is there. That's a great way when you have to get a new quarterback in there. Thankfully, he already has game experience. He's played in some games, and a good amount, not just trash games, not towards the end of the games, garbage time. He's played some good games. And then you have one great wide receiver, another good wide receiver, and then you have one of the top running backs in the country right behind you. That's not bad. And 4 starters on offensive line. That is not a bad way to put in a new quarterback and get this offense going. The defense showed pretty good improvement last year with Gene Chizik taking on as the defensive coordinator. Now, if UNC can beat the Seminoles on October 1st in Tallahassee, then the schedule lightens up from there. Clemson or Florida State would most likely await North Carolina in the ACC championship. They don't have to play Clemson this year. So all you have to worry about is Florida State. So when the committee looks at it, they're going to see, man, a 12-1 conference champion. If UNC can beat the Seminoles, and then they go and play Clemson, and if they can beat them, that might be pretty good. It's a stretch, but this is what the dark horse teams are. They're a stretch. So North Carolina can be one of the teams. Another one is the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Now, they start off the season with Southeastern Louisiana, Central Michigan, and Pittsburgh. 3-0. Well, I don't know. Pittsburgh, that might give them some trouble. And yes, Oklahoma State's defense, they got to replace a lot right there. And the offensive line needs to improve, but all 5 of them return. Mason Rudolph, pretty good quarterback. The receiving core, they're quick and explosive guys that can be there. The same thing with the running backs. They're real quick, explosive players. And entering the final 2 weeks of the regular season last year at 10-0, all they had to do was really just win one of those games. And that was to Oklahoma and Baylor. And they lost both of them. This year it's going to be pretty tough because now they have to travel to Baylor, to Oklahoma, and TCU. So, yeah. Dark horse team. If they can get through some of those or just 2 out of the 3, could have a dark horse team in Oklahoma State. Then you have the Washington Huskies. Now, a lot of people, we're giving them the hype because of recruiting and the class they're bringing in for 2016 and 2017. But no one's really talking about right now, the 2016 season, the players they have right now. They have sophomores in quarterback Jake Browning, who looks to improve off a pretty okay-ish, solid freshman year. You have Myles Gaskin, who did really good at running back. Have an experienced offensive line, a defense that returns starters basically at every unit. I mean, Washington, they were pretty good at the secondary is pretty great. So, and honestly, the Pac-12, you don't have a clear-cut favorite. You would if it would be Stanford if they had a quarterback. They don't. They're Paul Chryst or any of those other guys, they could be just garbage, and Christian McCaffrey can just try to ball out as much as he can. But we saw even with a pretty good quarterback in Kevin Hogan, they weren't that great. So you don't have to really worry about Stanford. USC has a very tough schedule, and they're most likely going to be beat up by the time they play. Oregon, they don't have that star quarterback. Vernon Adams, we knew he was going to be pretty good because of his resume that he had. And I think he had almost beat Washington before when he was at Eastern Washington. So he knew Oregon was going to be pretty good. Dakota Prukop, who knows if he can fulfill that role and be that starting quarterback to being really good enough to beat teams like Washington. So in Washington State, they got to replace a lot of guys on defense. Good thing is for Washington, Stanford and USC both come to Seattle. But Washington will have to travel to Oregon and to Washington State. Going to be tough. They haven't beat Oregon since, I think, like 2002 or 2003. So this could be a very promising year. Next year really will be Washington's glory time. If they can build this year, win at least 8 or 9 games, anything more than that is a huge bonus because of the recruiting they're getting. Woo, Washington, dark horse. Mark it on right now. I was going to say calendar, but put on a sticky bet. Last team. It's tough to label Michigan as a dark horse because a lot of people are putting them 4, 5, 6 in the top 10. But some things will obviously have to happen for them to get in. And the way they got beaten down by Ohio State, I get it. Ohio State has a ton of, honestly, you might even be able to switch Michigan and Ohio State as a dark horse because of Ohio State losing basically everybody to the NFL except for Urban Meyer. And then Michigan's failing to close out the game against Michigan State at home, so now they have to travel next year to Michigan State. We're going to give them that label this year. Michigan has one of the easiest schedules in college football this year. They start off the season with 5 straight home games. Teams against Hawaii, UCF, Colorado, Penn State, and Wisconsin. So look for Michigan to be undefeated at home throughout the entire year because it gets much easier even with that with their conference teams. And if they can scrape by 3 rebuilding teams in Michigan State, Iowa, and Ohio State, those are their 3 toughest games of the entire season. We could easily be looking at 11-1 or 12-0 Michigan team. And I get it. Whoa, that's jumping way too quick. Their quarterback, they don't have Jake Rudock anymore. John O'Korn, I think John O'Korn can be the guy. His experience, he's got a strong arm. He's played in the Houston system, so he knows how to air it out. Obviously, they won't be airing it out like they do in Houston, but he's capable of doing that if a game comes down to it. Jabril Peppers, one of the best athletes in college football. Kareem Walker, your running back of the future right there. Do they have a Devin Smith still at running back number 4? If they do, that's even better. The offensive line, obviously, we'll have to prove in a little bit. You're losing a guy. Jake Butt, tight end, is probably going to be the best tight end in college football this year. Defense, you got the coaching staff and you have the talent to be pretty good at defense. You get that done, it's pretty good. You're looking pretty good. So whether you could say they're a dark horse because of what needs to happen, they have a pretty easy schedule, so maybe it's not. I know they're rated pretty high, but a lot of people are picking them on the outside. Who knows? If you don't agree with my 5 dark horse teams, let me know yours in the comment section down below. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Short Sports Show.